Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
Hello, there he is.
Here I am.
How are you, brother?
Good morning. It's great to see you, Don. Hi, Derek. Nice to actually get to meet, face to face.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Cool.
Andrew, I'm so psyched that you're on, man. Derek, how you doing, buddy?
It's getting cold up here in Canada.
Derek, you're in Vancouver area, right?
Yeah. So it's.
And are you actually Canadian or a transplant?
I was born and raised.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right.
Hey.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to add you to my list of people I gotta kind of go through. We do an event here in Edmonton. We're gonna try to reboot it in May. And one of the things we tend to do is to focus on Canadian speakers, and we usually bring up an American or two. And I have a lot of things to go through, but Don, you're actually on my list of like one of the Americans that I'll take a look at if everything works. I'll make no promises right now, but I got a pretty cool list of people I'm going to try to score for this event. We did it in 2019, and we lost it in 2020, and it's time that we reboot it.
Well, it's exciting, and listen, just getting you on here, Derek. Like, why is Andrew on here right now? He's Andrew's definitely become a friend over the last year or so. I met him at Luca Hostiver's event. And it's funny. Andrew, how old are you?
I'm 44.
You're 44. It's
44.
funny because Andrew's only a year younger than me, but I love what he's doing. I feel like he's been in the business now. What are you, about 13 years?
Yep, just over 12.
Just over 12 years. And I'm starting to really notice him and what he's doing in the industry. And it's funny, it takes us different times to evolve in our career, right? Like Tom Plumber said, I'm 25 years in the business now. And he looked at me and he says, Don's a 20-year overnight success. Sometimes things just click at a certain time. And I know Andrew's been writing for publications like Barbend and Muscle and Fitness and T Nation. I can go on and on and on. Takes a very scientific approach to things, but also understands coaching and understands people. And I saw that when I was at Luca's event because, he kind of called me over and was like, hey man, would you sit and have lunch with us? And I started laughing. It'll be the first story that I tell about you because people have lost the ability to communicate. And I see it now with kids. Everything's done through texting or, they snap so-and-so, Snapchatting or whatever it is. Like there's just a different way of communicating. And I thought when he approached me like that, first off, it's an old school way of approaching someone, which I think is the most important way to have a conversation with someone. Let's sit and have a conversation. Would love to pick your brain, would love to talk to you. And we sat for an hour, we had lunch. And then he stuck in my head and we ended up talking more and more. And he was like, would you come on my podcast? And I'm like laughing at this point. I'm like, dude, I'd love to come on your podcast. It's amazing how when people approach you a certain way with this level of authenticity, how far it goes. And that's what sold me out on Andrew out of the gate. Then I got to know him and I started studying his work a bit and his writing and how he communicated with people and love what he does. And I'm almost referring to Andrew now as he's like one of the new young coaches, but he's only younger than me. He's been doing it. He's the seasoned veteran. And it sounds hysterical to say because he's not new to the business, but I'm putting a lot of weight behind what he's doing right now. So when we connected a few times and then recently reconnected at the Strong event and we've been on some calls and I was back on his podcast, very happy to see he was back on his podcast, that Canadian connection. And I'm like, Derek Hansen. Well, I've heard of Derek and I know Derek. I know what he's doing. I'm like, Derek is obviously one of my closest buddies and I've learned and stolen more information from Derek than almost anyone on the planet. I put him in top 5 in that sense. I'll continue to steal a lot of info from him because that's what we do, right? We're all kind of thieves in the industry when it comes down to knowledge. And I thought it'd be great to kind of get you on the podcast right now, introduce the world to Andrew Coates, tell us what you've been doing, where you got started. I want to kind of do a deep dive on you a bit and find out who you are and where you're going.
All right. I'll try to create a little bit of a summary there. So yeah. I was involved in sports at a fairly young age, cross-country skiing, basketball in a rural town in Eastern Canada, Newfoundland. So I'm from the same part of the country that your good friend, my friend, Muscle Doc Jordan Shallow was born in, the iconic bodybuilder and very good old friend of mine, Frank McGrath, and Jeff Nippert is also from that island originally. So it's kind of this funny little place. I really dabbled in, weights. My dad bought me a weight bench when I was in my teens, messed around with a bit in university, but I really got hooked on training at 24. I remember going into the movie Return of the King, right? The third Lord of the Rings movie. And this is how long this bloody movie is. I felt fine going in. Halfway through, I'm not feeling so hot. 2/3 of the way through, I feel like I'm really going to die. This is dragging on. I leave the theater, sweats, chills. And I'm assuming I had a bad flu, probably sick for 3 weeks, or who knows, maybe it was the first COVID case ever on record. And I lost about 10 pounds. I'm 6'2", and I walk around these days at about 255 pounds, reasonably lean, right? And so back then I was probably about a 180 and I got down to 170. And I, needless to say, was not feeling very good about this. So that kicked me in the pants to start hitting the gym regularly, 4 to 5 days a week, classic bodybuilding style stuff, body part split. Frank McGrath is literally going to the same gym, hanging out there. If anybody follows Lane Norton and saw that he won worlds, Masters Worlds, and he was competing in St. John's, Newfoundland, my home. What kind of sent him to, but he was working out at this gym that I started out at over 20 years ago. That's where he was doing his workouts. Anyway, so it stuck with me and I fell in love with it. And I was up to 210 pounds within the space of 7 months, just eating and training hard and feeling great. And, there was little interruptions in the early days, but it became a part of who I was. I moved across the country at 28 and I fell into this at 32. I joined a gym, was working out on the floor. The staff would keep saying, hey, you'd make a great trainer. I'm like, nah, no. And then finally I said, okay, let's try it. And I remember being totally overwhelmed at 32, completely changing careers, but it stuck with me and I enjoyed what I was doing. My clients were happy. They were renewing. As other trainers left, their clients would want to come over to me. I started getting referrals. And very quickly, I became one of the top salespeople and the top session performer in this company. But after 6 years, I decided to leave that. It wasn't really a great situation. Went out on my own as a contractor at this facility called Evolve Strength, where I'm sitting in the upstairs right today. And then I decided, okay, I got to start traveling these fitness conferences. Just started a podcast with my buddy Dean Guido, who's my former co-host. And I go down to the Fitness Summit in Kansas City. And there I meet Pete Dupuis and Brett Contreras and Greg Knuckles and the massive part of the industry. Dean Somerset's an old friend. He actually worked for the same company in Edmonton. He was one of the speakers. That was a big reason to go down. I met Lou Schuler, prominent former editor for a whole bunch of big publications. The next year I went again. I met Jonathan Goodman, Tony Gentlecore, just more people, Mark Fisher. And then later that 2017, I saw this event that it's like, wow, look at this lineup. Luca Hocevar's Fitness, Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit. So I went there and I met Brett Bartholomew and a whole array of other people. Pete Dupuis was there. Mark Fisher was there again. And then, so I got really deep into Luca's stuff. And then, so when I had the chance to come, I kept traveling to more and more of these events, meeting people. And along the way, and here's the biggest lesson, because I'm assuming most of your listeners are coaches, right?
No, probably, I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of consumers. We have a lot of people who are buying programs. We also have a lot of coaches, but I think it's probably about 50-50.
But this is probably more of a lesson for the coaches, but if you get in these environments, don't just, gotta get starstruck over kind of the speakers and the big names, but just immerse yourself in the people who are on the same journey that you're on. I met my friend Tim Arndt in 2017 at the same event. And then I found out, oh, he's got an event of his own in Spokane. Cool. So I went to it in 2018. I went to it in 2019. I met a whole bunch more people. And then come 2021, he needs a speaker for his event. And he asks me, is my first invitation to speak at anything? Which that's when I met my buddy Luke Carlson, who is the owner of Discover Strength in Minneapolis. So that led to speaking at his event this past year. And that led to more invitations. And all of a sudden in 2021, I meet you, we're hanging out. I meet my buddy Kenny Santucci. You and I are speaking at his event this past year. And it opened up so many more doors. And by the end of this year, I'm going to have spoke at 8 or maybe 9 different events. I got a really cool one coming up in Scottsdale, early December. I've got an NSCA regional. And then I went to Raise the Bar. My pals, Derek Mendoza and Nick Lamb. And you met Nick, he was the MC of Kenny's event. Because I brought Kenny down to it. to introduce him to these people. And now, you and I are both speaking at Raise the Bar come this February in 2023, because I said to Nick, you have to have Don in this lineup.
No, and listen, it's always nice, and I want Derek to chime in too. It's always nice to get recognized. It's always nice to, be a part of the conversation. But I think a reason why you've been a part of the conversation is because of this ability to communicate. And I feel like for the coaches listening out there, a lot of them don't want to go out and get their hands dirty. A lot of them don't want to go out, and they don't want to do things in stages. They want to see Luca on stage and say, I want to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm like, no, you got to earn the right to do that. Like, you've got to, my favorite story, and I'm going to kick it over to Derek, is Mark. Remember Mark Mania? You ever hear Mark Mania's story about when he was cleaning up weights? He was working out really, really quick. Derek, I don't know if you ever heard this, but I'm going to tell our listeners. Mark was cleaning up weights in like an Equinox, and there's no one on the gym floor. And there's one guy in the gym. He's on the step mill, and he goes, hey, what are you doing? He calls Mark over. Mark goes, I'm picking up this piece of trash. The guy goes, why? He goes, well, there's a piece of trash on the floor, and I see it there, and I feel like it's my responsibility to pick it up. And the guy goes, but you're a trainer. Why are you cleaning up? That's not your job. You're not a cleaning person. And Mark goes, sir, you don't understand. I have a sense of pride of being here. That's why he was the only guy on the floor who called him out on the step mill. Mark's gonna, I think, open his 10th club right now. And the guy went on to be his head investor. And it's just doing the little things when you think people aren't watching is what's allowing you to be on stage right now. Derek?
I just want to hear the story about the cleaning guy who gives you lifting technique advice right now after hearing that. Anyways, Andrew, you grew up or born and raised in Newfoundland. How'd you end up in Edmonton? Why was that your choice? Because, obviously the obvious, choices might be Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. What brought you to Edmonton, and how did things develop from there?
You would definitely understand this being Canadian, but if your listeners aren't, well, Alberta for a very long time has kind of been one of the greatest places for opportunity. There's more job availability, thriving energy sector. So it both seemed like a natural fit, but I also had it's as simple as I had an old university friend out here who had a room to stay in. I was looking for a change of scenery. I'd worked for banks. I'd owned my own nightclub. My family, is in the bar business a lot. Mom's a teacher. Dad owns a pub, but just it wasn't fulfilling. There wasn't necessarily a lot of opportunity back in 2000. I mean, this is me leaving in 2008, if I'm doing the math correctly. I'm trying to remember. No, 2006. So shit, you know what? I can't remember. It's around that time, and that wasn't necessarily a great economic, period of time. And it just was a bunch of these weird little things based on fate by just the people that I knew. And I just decided, hey, okay, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to put my head down and work hard. I worked in a casino for a while as a poker dealer and a poker manager, right? Like, these things don't sound glamorous, and people expect, oh, you're this passionate trainer coming out of school as a 19, 20-year-old, and you launch right into a fitness career. And I admire, and there's a little bit of, oh man, yeah, it would have been great if I gotten started at that age, and I would have almost 25 years under my belt in the industry. But okay, cool. It's like the person who, started getting into fitness at 30 or 40 or even 50, right? It's never too late to start. It's really important that you just get started. And whether it's in a fitness career or with your own personal fitness, everything after that is what matters. And you can have a tremendous impact, both on your own personal health or on the health of other people. And the industry's just been really kind to me. And, something I didn't kind of go into was, as Don mentioned, getting the opportunity to write. I got connected with Danny Sugart from T Nation along the way. And then she came on my podcast as a guest. Podcast, great vehicle to develop relationships and support other people. This is all about supporting other people. But then cool stuff tends to turn around if you actually do good things for other people. Invite to write for T Nation, a publication I've been reading most of the mornings as a trainer for years. So it was an honor. And that led to more and more and more opportunities. And all of a sudden, Generation Iron, Edwin Mejia, is in my email going, hey, would you come write for us at Generation Iron? It's like, holy shit, yeah, of course. And I'm working on some stuff that I'm not going to talk about until it's fulfilled, that Don has sort of like introduced me to, but that will not be discussed publicly until, I see it in print, basically. So we'll leave it.
Smart man. It is. Anytime I've opened my mouth early, I end up biting my tongue. I'm like, oh man.
Well, I'll tell you.
But you get excited. You get excited. It's okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story about that. Trainers, if this ever happens. If you search bodybuilding.com and my name, you will find an author page, but no article linked to it, because I was introduced, I wrote something for them, I was paid, the editor really took care of me. Then they were sold, restructured, the editor left, my article was never published. So I don't actually say, hey, I wrote for bodybuilding. I've written for Muscle and Fitness magazine. I was introduced to Andrew Gutman when he was still there. We're in talks, then all of a sudden they're sold, that's changed around. All of a sudden, oops, there goes Muscle and Fitness. Crap. I later on get an introduction to my pal Jeff Tomko, who's great. So I'm with you because you're persistent. And then someone turns around and introduces me to the editor of Barbend, who happens to be Andrew Gutman, who's a great guy.
Andrew's great.
He's great.
He's great.
So, I mean, persistence in these things, great, but you also can't celebrate it until it's like official.
Oh no, I'll make you feel a little bit better about this one. So I signed a contract with Garden of Life years ago. It was like a multi-year deal. They were paying just great money. They were really involving me in their product design. I helped them design their Garden of Life sport line product, and great culture. My boss, this guy Jeff Brahms, to this day, I love the guy. It was a great partnership, and the company ended up getting sold by Nestle, which is why, we were at the time, all of us were kind of let go, and then they started bringing us back on. But I was with Thorne at that time. But I remember for a year, they hired a ghostwriter and we were writing a book. I was writing a book. It was going to be my book. It was my story, writing a book. So people are like, what's been going on? I'm like, yeah, I got a book in the works, and we're literally weekly calls and going through all this information, and like it's coming down to the finished copy, and I'm going through it and I'm like, this isn't me. I got on my buddy Jeff. I'm like, Jeff's the VP of the company. He's like, how is it? How do you feel about it? And I'm like, it's shit. I'm like, it's complete shit. I'm like, I can't put my name behind this. He goes, well, what do you suggest we do? I'm like, cut it up and use it as blogs, and cut it up and use it as social content. I'm like, I can't put my name behind this. It doesn't sound like me. It's not my voice. I didn't connect well with the author. And it just wasn't something that he was able to portray my voice. And we ended up not using it. But I remember, talking to book. And that was kind of the last straw for me. This is probably, 7 years ago. And then I was like, man, I'm gonna just shut my mouth until these things launch, and, keep it quiet and just put my head down and work. Cause you really don't know, until it's signed on the dotted line. You really don't know.
No.
Derek.
Andrew, can you talk to me a bit more about just how you structure your business in Edmonton? I'm going to keep focusing on Edmonton here. I got COVID last year when I was in Edmonton in April, and I have fond memories of the place. Yeah, I'm curious, just because I know some, people in that community and that are in sort of the sport fitness community. I'm curious how you've structured things and how what you found has been successful.
So actually, I like this concept. So I came up through the commercial gym environment, and you're probably familiar with World Health, and they no longer exist, but the session model. And we have a lot of people, business mentors, on one sense say, oh no, you got to stop doing the session model. You have to do monthly payments. You have to go online, et cetera, et cetera. I think there can be value in all those things, but what I've done is, and I still to this day train full-time in person. I have a lot of really great clients. I mean, my clientele has, largely become sort of a lifestyle, long-term group of clientele, or they're business owners, a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, that sort of stuff. Every once in a while, I'll work with young athletes, but that's not been a place where I've kind of marketed or branded around. I've had some like AHL hockey players, but no NHL guys. And it was just how things evolved. And it's also really important you don't get boxed into that model, because it becomes very restrictive and the only way to do things. So what I've done over time is, by spending time around people like Don has been a major inspiration on this, and Don's course, going through that, really cool.
Thank you.
Then, getting to sit down and have dinner with, when we were in New York, I have Luca Hosavar, at Luca's girlfriend, Waitia, and then Kelsey and Dennis Heenan, who are amazing. And they've had insane success with their online programs. So being around this sort of stuff and seeing other people doing these programs, a little over a year ago, I've got a client and mentee who's really smart. Bailey's great. And so we got to talking. She's really good at systems. She's really great with her clientele. And we thought, okay, I said to her, why don't we look at the idea of building a group program? And we could ultimately became an online women's group strength training program. We would deliver one every 13 weeks for a year. Just post it up on Instagram, see what happened. We wanted a beta test with 10 people last January. We got 40 inquiries, 31 women did it. We're like, okay, cool, let's go with it. And it's grown a bit. And then now all of a sudden we've realized we have this really cool, high quality thing that we can deliver. And the women who are doing it love it. They're raving about it. But also keep an open mind about how can we maintain the integrity of this product, this program, but also scale it. But I'm not interested in getting away from training people in front of me one-on-one because I'm fulfilled by it. I really enjoy it. I really love it. And I think trainers, they do get pushed with this message that you're supposed to get away from it. I think it's also really important it's one of the reasons why I've been waving Dawn around so much in all my media is go look at what Dawn is doing, because Dawn has also, owned a gym for 15 years, did everything there, worked his ass off on top of that. I think anybody listening probably knows Dawn's story about, financial times weren't always as easy. So he did what he had to do to pay his employees and take care of people, keep the lights on. So he's paid the dues there. But Dawn is also, the example of success in the online space, all the years of leveraging relationships and giving and his own personal brand development and, being on the cover of Muscle Fitness magazine and, what this podcast does and have his relationship with you. And I want to talk a bit more about you after too, because I keep seeing your stuff on Lucas. And I know that you're a massive authority, especially when it comes to, the sprinting and that sort of stuff. But looking at what Dawn is doing is also a good eye opener for coaches. And I actually think if you put yourself in a position where you acquire these skills and you break away from limiting boxes that we get put into as trainers, then you could actually figure out what will authentically work for you, or maybe a mixture of these things. Because I feel like maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, there was this wave where a lot of people were trying to get away from in person. They were trying to go online, hybrid stuff. And then all of a sudden you get people starting to creep into a bit more business mentorship, which we've seen some people we know do really well with it. But what tends to be true about the trainers who get into business mentorship who are successful is they still are doing their core business first. Pete Dupuis, he's still got Cressy Sports Performance. Lucas still got Vigor, and so many other things he's involved in. And Jonathan Goodman, and he's got the Online Trainer Academy, and he's been building stuff out that way. As opposed to the people who kind of went all in because they were in a hurry to get away from helping the person in front of them. I just had one of my retired lawyers just training with him. He's a great guy to hang out with. He's about to publish a book. We talk about writing and that whole process, the last several months. And he's actually taken stuff from my experience and I'm learning stuff from him. I love that stuff. I don't want to get away from that. I don't want to live behind a laptop.
I totally agree with you. I mean, it's interesting because we're all three of us here, I don't care how successful we go on to be, we're always going to be coaches at heart. You just can't help yourself. It's one of those things where you need to be around people. And even with COVID and the digital boom and not being in front of people, when we got around events, guys, remember that feeling, that first event that you got back to or you spoke at, and suddenly you're like, holy shit, I need this. Like I need that personal connection. And I really think it takes a special person to do it. I think where a lot of coaches want to run away, or why they want to run away from this, is I think some of them out there are a little, I don't know, in a way, maybe embarrassed or ashamed. Like suddenly coaching isn't like, coaches now are making 6, 7, 8 figures a year. There's a coach out there that they just featured that's worth over 9 figures. And when you start looking at these numbers and you start looking at some of the more top coaches, they're doing more money than most people on Wall Street are doing. And it's like, it was just never affiliated with that. It was like, oh, well, is this someone who is not educated? I was laughing the other day. I was speaking with a woman who became a health coach, and I know her through my family, and a very bright young woman named Mariana Mayer. And she graduated from Yale, and she went on to get her master's degree. And I'm like, Mariana, why aren't you putting that up on your social? Like that's a selling point, right? Like you graduated from Yale University. That's impressive. Like coaches now are people with educations, real educations. You guys meet, like, they are looking to become coaches now because they understand the level of fulfillment that it gives you, right? The fact that you're not stuck in front of a computer all day, but the fact now that you can make a really good living off of this. I mean, the numbers that I just named earlier, potentially, those are Wall Street numbers. Those are top guy on Wall Street numbers, right? Right. And there will be people in our industry at some point that are going to be worth over $1 billion. And they did that through leveraging their career in fitness and business. So we're really at, I think, a special time in this industry because it has evolved. I mean, times have changed. When I was working at Equinox in 1999, I was one of the highest producing coaches, making a little over $25,000 a year. Think about that, like $25,000 in a year. And now to go on and to see coaches doing what they're doing. This was back in 1999. That's, 23, 24 years ago, guys. Think about how the industry has evolved now since then. Think about the opportunity. Think about the things now, Andrew, that you're talking about. If you mentioned to me back in 1999, Derek, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Oh, social media. What are you talking about? Building a digital business. What are you talking about? Online coaching. What's online? Right? And you start breaking these things down, networking online, more public speaking about fitness business, digital fitness business, all these things that we're talking about, online courses, modules, all these things that Derek's doing now. You'd be back in 1999, you would think someone was speaking a foreign language to you. There was no terminology back then. These terms did not exist in our industry. So to see us going through that now, honestly, it's pretty motivating, if you ask me.
And it's about how can we scale impact? How can we reach the maximum number of people? And it goes into so many places. Like with what you're doing, Don, the fact that you pivoted when COVID hit, your gym lease was up, you closed it, and you leaned hard in online. And you're the quickest to admit you didn't know what the hell you were doing, but you started putting up daily videos, creating free programs, hundreds of thousands of email list subscribers right away. And I bet you, when you did that, you didn't have any idea you'd be able to turn that into a coaching course.
No, you do it because of a feeling. That's why you did what you did. That's why you left the industries you were in. Derek, you're doing what you're in now because of this feeling that you get. You can see it on the best coaches. When the best coaches are, and you guys, you know what I'm talking about. When you're in front of a group, you're speaking, you're coaching someone one-on-one, something clicks, whether there's 500 people in the crowd or whether you're working one-on-one. When that light bulb goes off in that person's head, it's like suddenly, it's just like you're in this level, you're in this flow state of like, oh my God, I got this person. Like we're getting them to where they need to be going to. That's a very special feeling. Hey, Andrew, thanks for the love and all the props, but you're doing it. You're doing the same thing.
It's people like Derek and our pal Pat Davidson and so many other people who have created taken all this knowledge, all this experience, put it into a course, a seminar, a system that we can then turn around and go. Like one of the reasons why I love Luca is because there's not a lot of people who do more for the industry. Derek, I know who you are because of Luca, because you're on Luca's media. Like I know who my good buddy Joel Jameson is because of Luca, because I met him in 2017, and now Joel and I jam all the time about stuff. And I'm going to hang out with Joel and Luca in Vegas next weekend because Joel has an insider event that I got an invite to. So it's going to be great to spend more time around these people who I'm learning from, and it's breaking my preconceived notions of how to do my business. And I like going to this stuff. So when Pat Davidson came up here to Edmonton earlier this year, I made sure I was there to attend it. When every time Jordan Shallow comes in with his Prescript team, I go there. And part of it is to support, part of it is to be around, like-minded people. But I'm also hungry to learn. And that's a really fun way for me to spend a weekend. So, sooner or later, I got to figure out a way to get in front of one of Derek's courses and seminars because I'm excited about that.
Right.
And, we'll figure something like that out, after, but that's something that's really important to me.
It's true, Derek. It's like, it's that hunger to learn, right? It's that thirst to be in that environment. And in a way, you also want to highlight people that are doing it right. And, that's why, At the end of the day, Andrew, that's why you're on here right now. We hit it off. I want to highlight, Derek wants to highlight what it is you're doing, because we need more people out there doing what it is, you are doing.
And let me say something a little bit more about that kind of thing about impact and status, because I'm recently going through a book called The Status Game, and it's a sobering eye opener about how humans are wired. Humans are wired to seek status, and it explains all these historic examples of all kinds of good and bad things. And I see all the time coaches and trainers do things that tell me that they're very wired in thinking about status. So, it'll be like, hey, reaching out to people and go, hey, can I come on your podcast? I've got a really great story. It's like, okay, cool. But how about I help you, show you the path to do? Maybe it's you create your own podcast that shares and supports other people. Maybe it's you start writing for your own website. You learn the skill. I've read dozens of books on writing to be able to earn the right to write great stuff and send great stuff from my experience as a coach into T Nation and the other publications. And T Nation was the one that gave me my start. So I treat them great. I still try to get them stuff, right? And my editors are awesome. And Chris Sugared, he's emailed me before going, hey man, I'm not getting a lot of good submissions. Do you have anything, right? I need something. And just having that kind of trust, making sure you really take care of your editors, right? Again, I mentioned my buddy, Jeff Tomko, he's my editor at Muscle and Fitness. And so when we're down in New York, I arranged with Kenny to be able to bring him on a guest pass to come hang out at this event. Meanwhile, I get to meet David Thomas Tao, the founder of Barbend, and Eb. What's Eb's title? He's
the head fitness director of Men's Health.
Men's Health, exactly. Yeah, I was pretty sure he was a head director. So, I met Eb in passing, and then we got to hang out and all this sort of stuff. I'm a little off track here, but
no, it's all right. That's the story of my life.
If you look at all of the ways that you can scale your reach, scale your ability to share and support and help more people, instead of approaching people with this transactional attitude, well, what can I get out of this if I ask for something from someone else? Don't ask what people can do for you. I swear to God, in every walk of life, find ways that you can actually share, support, throw everything behind other people that you like and you believe in. And I promise you, like, the world will give it back tenfold. That's what's happened to me. And let's talk social media. Trainers love to shit on social media and say, and criticize people with big followings. And yeah, we know that there are people with big followings who share bad information. We know that. They're out there. Half the time the followings are fake. They paid for it anyway. So why even stress it? But it's also sort of a sour grapes attitude to say, well, I can't do that. I don't need that. When we look around at great people like you and Luca and so many other people across our industry, look at Kelsey Heenan with over 400,000 Instagram followers, or look at Jordan Syatt with over 800,000, who are sharing great information, inspiring people, positive energy, giving out into the world. And then they're able to scale impact. And followers, fine, it's a vanity metric. We know that people will look at follower count and attribute authority to follower count. And that's a flaw within the human thinking, right? But we can also exploit it for good, because if we get really good at taking all of our knowledge and our experience and sharing it in a way that whatever social media platform you're on, it brings more eyeballs to you, more people want to share it, then that turns around and brings more people to you. And we have limited attention spans. We can only swipe through one post at a time. And if all these coaches are collectively and individually putting themselves out there with good info and serving the people that are already part of their world, who actually want you to be their go-to fitness person, then you're actually crowding out the people who share the malicious information and all the other stuff that we get frustrated about. And one of my frustrations is this attitude. It's like, well, we need more regulation. We need more of this. We need more of that. It's like, okay, first of all, that's not going to make the internet influencers go away. And two, even if they did go away, the people that are following them are not going to find you, because you're not doing enough to put yourself out into that public eye, because you guys are smart people. You guys are smart coaches. You've earned the right to do it. Maybe it feels like it's all been said before, but your authentic way of expressing it is still going to help someone. So This is one of my favorite things to do, is to say to people, stop thinking about status, start thinking about how much you can positively impact people. Be really patient, work on these skills, learn video. Video is huge now. I'm not great on video, but I'm getting there. I got a video. I hired a young coach who's going to do a whole bunch of filming for me tomorrow because I got to build this video library. I'm going to build a free program because I don't have an email list lead magnet yet.
Yeah, do a lead magnet, but that's where you're involved.
Yeah,
that's where you're involved.
Yeah, all the stuff I'm trying to do. Yeah, you get behind on stuff, but I'm not beating myself up over it. But I'm going to do this. And hey, this is going to be a really high quality free program for people because you did this stuff. And it was like hearing you talk about this stuff was that push to say, Andrew, you're so immersed in helping the person in front of you, but you've got to be able to scale more and more of this stuff. So these are the things that I'm most passionate about because I don't want someone to come to me and ask, hey, can you share this post or can you do this? It's like, just invest so much in your own skill at this that people are just voluntarily lining up to share your stuff. To invite you.
That's what happened with Derek. And Derek, I want you to chime in on this. Derek had a client who was coming up to New York. This was years ago. I didn't know Derek. I've heard of Derek, and I get a call saying, can Derek Hansen come in and train this actor? And we typically didn't allow people on the outside to come in. It was a membership club, but I knew of Derek. He had a great reputation, and I knew the actor. I was like, sure, tell him to come on in. Please enjoy it on us. Derek was there for, I think, 6 weeks, Derek.
Yeah, I was there like 2-week stints over like 3 or 4 times I was there. Yeah. So
there wasn't a day that Derek wasn't on the floor teaching a seminar to all my coaches.
Great.
Seriously. No, it was, and I'm sitting there and I'm working, I'm watching him. I'm like, Derek's teaching a seminar? He's back there every day. Coaches are out there, they're sitting there watching him, going through sprint mechanics. The next thing you know, I'm out there running with them. And it's just like, by the time he was leaving, I was like, dude, I don't want you to go. Like, I know you have to go home. I'm going to miss you, man. Do you want to do this podcast? And he was like, let's do it. And that's kind of how it started. Right, Dave?
yeah. Well, the funny thing is that whenever I've been working with this actor since 2006, and when I'd have to travel with him, and most of the time it would be places that didn't have anything to do. So I'm in like Albuquerque, and what do? Do I go to the set, and Don's been on sets, and sit there and just be bored to tears, or do I sit in my hotel room and try to do something? So now, 2018 or 2017, hey, New York City. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's stuff to do. So, and then of course I go meet Don. And the great thing was the actor met other actors there, so he felt comfortable. And then I'm like, hey, other trainers, right? So I felt comfortable. And so now I'm like, well, let's do something with this time. I actually can work with people and talk to people, not just sit in a trailer in my hotel room. So it worked out really well. Yeah. So, and the rest is history, but it was definitely an interesting sort of beginning with Don and I.
But I think that's what that's what teed it up, right, Andrew? And you said something earlier, when you were taking care of editors and making sure things aren't so transactional. I can't begin to tell you. I bet you I have given away more free sessions and more free stuff with nothing in return than a coach that's been doing this. That in comparison to a coach who's been training for 5 to 10 years, comparing the amount of free stuff I've given to their amount of sessions, I can assure you I've given more free stuff. And there are things that to this day, I'll never get anything in return for and won't expect anything in return. And it's just that ship has sailed. It's done. But you got to go in and you got to invest, right?
It's much more than just what you can get in return, because Don, I know you enough to know that you don't even think that way. Often we just do these things for our own soul, for our own well-being. When I had you on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, there's a gentleman in the background that you just let come to the barn, and you say he's been there 4 or 5 times a week, and you're just doing that just to help this guy out. Is really cool story. Really quickly, Derek, I just sent you a message on Instagram with my cell number because I want to pull you onto my podcast. I would love to actually have more of a chance to talk directly with you and make this conversation about you, because I know I'm the guest here today. So if you're down for that, that's important to me. So
I love that.
Anytime. Yeah, anytime. And I mean, the interesting thing is, like, everybody says like transactional as it's a negative thing, but if I get to work with Don's staff, I get to work on myself in delivering that. And I learn from them and I go, okay, well, what kind of clients do you work with? And they say, oh, this is like, these are some cases. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me think about that so that when I encounter that, I'll be ready for it. So it is transactional in that even though I'll volunteer my time, I'm getting something out of it. Like I'm pulling something. And maybe that's just a mindset shift where you're like, okay, it's not just about money. It's about obviously the relationship and then the exercise or the training of going through and working with somebody. So I really appreciate doing that stuff. So I'm going to go to New York, teach a course, and then I'm going to spend some time with Dawn at the end of November. And again, we're not just sitting around eating burritos. We're like, hey, what are you thinking about for this or this or this? So we're constantly challenging each other.
No, it was funny. Last time Derek was out here, we literally, your juices are going because Derek had me get he brought this 360 cam out. And the next thing you know, Derek's very good at video and editing, and I'm watching him video and editing stuff, and we're creating content so naturally. And we're starting to put some new content up there, and it was fun. And then he started working out with me, and we started going back and forth a bit. And it was, it was really, it was really nice. It's nice to get around people that you click with. And every time, Andrew, you, Derek, Luca, Kelsey, anytime you get around these people, we're all, I think when I say cut from the same cloth, I think we're all looking for the same thing. We just want to be around great people and we just want to get better. And I think it's that simple. And I think those were the good coaches. But, again, getting back into that transactional piece, you gotta be willing to go and give. And my business plan has always been very simple. And I'm going back to as simple as just being a coach. When the time in my life when it was just Don the trainer, what was my business plan? And my business plan was this simple. It was make sure they leave an hour later feeling better than they did when they came in. And it was just because you know how it is. You don't know the mood. You don't know if they're fighting with their spouse, their wife, their husband, work issues with their parents, their dog could have you don't know what's going on, but it's your job to, and I keep using this line, let them look at you as a necessity, not a luxury. And when you lock that down as a coach at any level, you're going to be untouchable because there's always going to be someone out there smarter. There's going to be someone smarter than Pat. There's going to be someone smarter than Jordan. It's going to happen. They're going to be out there, but it's how you can connect with people, I think, is most important.
And, to take that further, there's all this talk about a recession. There's all this talk about, the fear around this. And then, people in our industry immediately get worried. Oh, I'm going to lose my clients. This is a luxury that pay for. You're right. More and more, I think what people will do is they'll forego the more expensive vacation. They'll forego the new car purchase. But if you really do, as you said, make them feel great, and if they're really cognizant of just how essential this is to their long-term well-being, you're not a luxury. You're really essential to them. And I think more and more, because I think this is the attitude that's evolving. And the last few years, I think has crystallized this for people. This is not something that's negotiable. Meanwhile, if you continue to upgrade your skills, develop your relationships, and have a passion for this thing, people are going to find you. And this is where it comes back to what I said about not thinking in terms of status, but I'm all about building authority and credibility and a great word of mouth reputation, because and I think, if you get, like I was talking to one of my clients and he thinks this is really cool. He's a 55-year-old owner of an insurance company, but the fact that I write for some of the publications I do, that's bragging rights for him to his buddies. He thinks that's cool as hell. So there is the way that people perceive you if you go and you have a successful podcast. And if you do go and put yourself out there and start writing for stuff, and it's not that hard to get on with some of these publications and find other ways, even if it's just starting to speak locally. Maybe you're doing in-services for other trainers, like what you described, what Derek was just doing. Or if you're finding the business groups or you're going to companies and doing lunchtime presentations or whatever it takes to gain that experience. These things are all authority builders. And I think that's one of the best things that trainers can lean into on top of the work with the clients in front of them, because you may not know where you're going or where you want to be, but it puts you in a position to be able to accept opportunities as they arise, which is exactly what happened with your online business.
100%. Andrew, do me a favor. Let everyone know, where can they find you? Where are they, if they want to contact you, where's the best place to find Andrew Coates?
All roads run through Instagram at Andrew Coates Fitness. I respond to every message that I get there. So check me out there, please. I love questions. I mean, yeah, my website, andrewcoatesfitness.com. I'm bad at writing articles for my own website because I'm trying to feed the different publications. And I find that challenging because I work so full time and now I have all these speaking engagements coming up. So those kind of take a bit of priority, but I'm less of the prolific writer like my pal Lee Boyce, or I got a buddy, Shane McLean. Shane doesn't really have much of a media following, but he pumps out articles for Muscle Fitness, for Bar Bend and other things. Roger Lockridge is another guy who's been around a long time.
I know Roger. He's a sweet guy. He's a nice guy.
I've interacted with him a little bit. He seems like an amazing guy. There's no social media following, but he's a diehard insider writing for
old school, man. Old school. Roger's old school, like in his gym, old school iron. I love it. Good for him.
Yeah. And so these people are doing amazing things, just pumping out crazy amounts of articles. Whereas I'm trying to make sure I get out some really good quality stuff, serve the organizations that have been really good to me, and then show other coaches, all right, here's how you can leverage this stuff into being able to reach, share, support, give our industry more that helps them turn around and be more fulfilled with their careers, reach and help more people. So yeah, please, Instagram at Andrew Coates Fitness.
And also, I think that's impressive. I think a lot of people, when you said I answer every DM, it's tough to do that, right? It's a commitment. Derek gets it a lot, people wanting free content. And I think that's part of it. That's part of giving. The problem I have now with DMs is, fortunately, you get so many of them, you just can't keep up at a certain point. So you got to go in and you have to start filtering. But there was a period of time where I took a lot of pride in answering every DM. And when I have time, I'm going through, I'm scrolling through. I might find messages from months ago. But I think that's a part of it, and that's important. So listen, man, it really has been, it's been a real pleasure to call you a friend and see you doing what you're doing in the industry. And I know I'm excited for you two to meet in person, and I'm excited to, hopefully be doing a lot more work with you. Just keep leading by example.
Well, I appreciate it. And, one more point about what you said, it's, if you're in this industry, it is fair to have boundaries and a reasonable expectation of what you can do. And you're at that point where your priorities are family, you've built systems and scale. Like, let's shout your course out. Okay. Seriously, like, that course is a great course. I've gone through it, and, I'll let you tell people about it a little bit, but it is a way to teach you to do a lot of what we talked about. Take what you've already done. Here's how to build and scale, turn it into a profitable business that could be really lucrative for you.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, we don't all want to be doing early morning to late in the evening plus weekends, especially if you have a family. I mean, forget about it. I'm kind of lucky in that, or unlucky, whichever way you want to look at it, is that I don't have a family. It's just me and my cat Ozzy. But I'm very fulfilled with what I do, but that's not everybody's world either. So it's not fair or reasonable to expect that, hey, Pop, Jordan Syatt's kind of legendary for responding to people, but with Jordan's following, it's not really fair for people to think that he's going to engage in very deep, long, enduring conversations with every person who asks, right? So it is about reasonable boundaries, and coaches, you guys also have to decide what are boundaries around your time and your engagement with social media, because social media can be a giant time sink.
Awesome, man. Well, again, appreciate it. Excited to see you again in person. Derek, excited for you guys to hook up, and we'll let you know when this launches.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Best, Andrew. Talk to you, man.